No Deion Clark, but a bunch of question marks at the linebacking core for Virginia Tech. Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC joins us to break down the Hokies at linebacker. And Mike, we talked about it before we came on in regards to the scheme, possibly playing into the hands of this being the one position where there's not a ton of players. So that may not be a huge concern. But Deion Clark leaves 22.5 tackles for loss and 8.5 sacks over the past 2 years. So he's gone. Can you kind of set us up from a personnel standpoint what we're going to see this fall?
Yeah, so I think the one thing to consider when talking about Virginia Tech's linebacking core specifically is the fact that Tech likes to play a lot of 3-3-5 defense. We've seen 4-2-5. We haven't seen as much of the conventional 4-3 looks that we may have seen maybe 5 or 10 years ago out of Virginia Tech defense. As the offenses have kind of evolved in the ACC, so is Virginia Tech's defense. It's Bud Foster's way of trying to stay ahead. So in that regard, the Hokies aren't as deep at linebacker as they are in other positions on either side of the football. I think, in my opinion, the linebacker is probably the weakest part of their entire team, at least the weakest unit. But that doesn't mean they don't have some playmakers. Andrew Motuapuaka, he's going to be your middle linebacker. He has been now for the last 2 seasons. He's going to be a redshirt junior this fall. 11 games played last year. He suffered some minor injuries, but he ended up playing in 11 games, started all 11, and made 73 tackles. No matter what defense Virginia Tech lines up in, Andrew Motuapuaka is playing the mic, so he'll be right there in the middle of the defense. And barring any major injuries or anything like that, he'll be your starter all year long. Tremaine Edmunds, he's the brother of Trey Edmunds, the former Virginia Tech running back who has since transferred to Maryland. He's also the brother of Terrell Edmunds, who plays in the secondary for Virginia Tech. So let's just consider the long line of Virginia Tech families here. We talk about the Fullers all the time with Kendall, Kyle Fuller, Vincent Fuller, Corey Fuller. And now Virginia Tech's establishing a similar pipeline with the Edmunds family now, as they have 2 representatives from the Edmunds family on that defense, and then one former contributor, Trey Edmunds, of course, moving on to Maryland. So Tremaine Edmunds, he's going to be a true sophomore. Played in 13 games last year, recorded in 2 starts, recorded 11 tackles. The coaching staff's really high on him. Now, if Tech lines up in a 2 linebacker look, I don't know how much playing time he'll get, but he'll definitely be in the rotation because Virginia Tech has another very talented outside linebacker in Anthony Shagog, who's going to be a redshirt junior, played in 13 games last year, making 5 starts, recorded 29 tackles, and was also a contributor on special teams. So when considering Tremaine Edmunds and Anthony Shagog, it's really going to be the coaching staff's call on who they want to put out there when they line up with an extra defensive back and still want to go with the 4-man look up front. If they run with 2 linebackers, it's going to be Motuapuaka and one of Edmunds and Shagog. But I think regardless, those are the 3 linebackers. They'll play the biggest factor, at least in the 3-man rotation at the position heading into the fall.
So the Edmunds catching up to the Fullers in regards to numbers of players playing Virginia Tech football overall. If they can catch up in regards to talent and production on the field, then we're going to have a different story here. That's going to be a good thing. So you've set us up in regards to who we're going to see on the field. I've looked at and we reviewed recruiting rankings for 2015 and 16. Nobody on the listings in regards to impact guys coming out of high school in the top 50 at those linebacking positions, inside, outside linebacker. But that not necessarily a huge concern for you, but it would be nice to see some other guys step in because injuries are probable.
Definitely. Virginia Tech's had a lot of issues on their defense regards to staying healthy. That was one of the contributing factors last year to Virginia Tech falling off by their standards, ending up as the 44th ranked total defense in the country. Definitely a step down from the top 15, top 20 defenses that we're used to seeing out of Bud Foster's group over his time in Blacksburg under Frank Beamer, and now, of course, under Justin Fuente. Now looking at the roster, I mean, they're pretty thin at linebacker, but the 2 guys who I think are going to play some sort of role as depth options. I don't know how much playing time they'll get, but I think they'll definitely be options should there be injuries to that group. Our redshirt junior Sean Huelskamp, who has already suffered injury, missed all of spring, recovering from surgery, but he's expected to play this fall. Played in 4 games last year, made 13 tackles. His biggest issue has been staying healthy. So again, if we're going to talk about injuries, Sean Huelskamp might be right in the middle of it. So how much he'll be able to contribute and how healthy he'll stay kind of remains to be seen. But the other guy I want to talk about is Jamion Moss. He's going to be a redshirt junior. He's played in 25 games, so he's the guy that's dressed for each of the last 2 seasons and most of the contests for the Hokies. He doesn't have any real playing time experience under his belt as a starter on defense or even as a replacement level player. All of his all of his contributions have come on defense, or not on defense, on special teams, where he's in his 25 games, he's only made 3 tackles. So special teams contributor, that's really all that he's been. Definitely has the tools, has the size to play linebacker, but Jules Camp and Jamion Moss, when those are your 2 replacement level players at linebacker, it's going to be tough sledding for you. So the hope is that, if those guys are able to stay healthy and contribute, that'll be great. But if not, Virginia Tech has a bunch of unproven freshmen that they can turn to from this past recruiting class. Tavante Beckett, he's a 5'10" linebacker out of Virginia. Emmanuel Belmar and Aaron Carter. Those are 3 of the most recent linebackers out of this last recruiting class for the Hokies, who I believe could end up playing a role in some way or another if something catastrophic happens. But if not, I think they'll likely be redshirted unless the coaching staff sees a need to play them on special teams. So, like I mentioned, it's a thin group for the Hokies on defense at linebacker, but they have, starting with Andrew Motuapuaka, the one proven guy in the middle of the defense that you really need, and that's the one positive coming out of this for the Hokies, is that they have the one guy in the middle that can kind of lead the defense. And then 2 guys at outside linebacker at starters, Tremaine Edmunds, who's shown a lot of promise based on his play last year, and Anthony Shagog, the way he's played over the last couple of seasons. I think that trio can really make a difference this fall for the Hokies if they want to improve and become that top 15 defense that Bud Foster's used to in Blacksburg. But if there are injuries, it's going to be, a group of unproven players and guys with injury history behind them, coming in to be the replacement. So it's an unproven group for the Hokies, but a group that does definitely have talent, especially when looking at a lot of the true freshmen that are coming up, who will definitely be difference makers down the road, but it might not be this season.
Yeah, you definitely summarized it very well there, Mike. Motuapuaka, the playmaker, 11.5 tackles for loss, 4 interceptions at the linebacker spot last year. Edmund showed us some good signs as a true freshman, coming up with 2.5 tackles for loss. Then it's a bunch of guys that need to step up and provide some depth, although at a position where depth is not necessarily crucial because of 2 linebackers being on the field a majority of the time, 3 against some run-heavy teams. Virginia Tech at linebacker, Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC, helping us track it down. Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.